And hello and welcome to Hollywood Blockbusters. I am your host, Joe Hollywood. And joining me as usual is Imaginos Pete
Hey.
and Andrew Walker.
Hello.
Dag nabbit, thanks for joining us, guys. I got to tell you, I am so excited to finally get around to discussing this topic. It is something that I wanted to do on my old podcast that we never got around to for whatever reason. And so after years of doing podcasts about movies, we're finally going to talk about our favorite Westerns.
Wow. I was going to say it's been a long time coming. You've been thinking about doing this since your old podcast.
Yeah, the old movies for dumb guys.
And didn't we try to find some murders that happened, some crimes that happened in the West?
I don't know if we touched on the Old West. That would have been a good topic.
Because I was struggling to find some. Of course, when I was doing some digging, I was like, really? No one did anything?
Yeah. No, there's
Except
a couple
for
of
Rust.
good stories. And as a matter of fact, I've watched a couple of movies over the past few days based on some historical events. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But there are some movies that are based on actual historical events of the Old West that are, stranger than fiction. So now, I think part of the reason why we never really got around to talking about it on my old podcast is because when I bring up Westerns to my friends who are movie buffs, the majority of them go, nah, not my thing, which really surprises me. I love Westerns. It's one of my favorite genres. Some of my all-time favorite movies are Westerns. And as I was assembling my list here today and doing some research online, I found out that, based on Rotten Tomatoes and stuff like that, that Westerns are some of the most beloved movies ever made, especially the old classics that really stand the test of time. And talking to a couple people here in the office earlier today, when they were like, Westerns aren't really my thing. I'm like, what I love about Westerns is the simplicity of it. There's no multiverses. There's no time paradoxes. It's usually good versus evil, even though some of the better Westerns, that line is blurred a little bit.
Especially the more recent ones.
Yeah, the anti-hero.
Yep.
But it's a simple story, and you can take like modern morality and wrap it in a Western and try to make a message with just two people standing in the street pointing guns at each other. You can use that Western to get that message across. And so I really love the straightforward simplicity of Westerns. A lot of them I only started discovering after the American Film Institute released their 100 Greatest Movie List, and on a mission to try and watch as many of those as possible. And I think I'm up around 95 of their 100. I found myself watching movies like The Searchers and High Noon and stuff like that, and just being blown away, like, oh my God, what have I been missing? So I developed a love of classic Westerns within the last 20 years or so. But I've seen a lot of Westerns in the theater when the modern Westerns came out, and some of those are Oscar winning and high grossing. So it really surprises me to meet people who go, Westerns aren't my thing. I love a good Western. Let's start with you, Imaginos Pete. Where do Westerns fall in your love of film?
Quality, not quantity, because there are a ton of Western movies and TV series. But for me, it's most of Clint Eastwood's Westerns I've seen. And my dad was the one that got me started into them. And then I think for a lot of people, when I hear them say the same thing. It's about pacing, because you're just riding on the horse. We're trying to survive in this town. You got bandits that are going to rob you, or you're trying to rob to survive or escape from the law. You
just described Red Dead Redemption.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of galloping across open plains.
And you got one job after another. And sometimes it's nothing earth-shattering. You're not trying to save the world. You're just trying to save your farm. You save the town.
Yeah.
Keep the town running. Or you're trying to steal enough money to start a new life. And, there are a bunch of people in your way. And if you just boil it down to that, you could do that. You could set that anywhere else. But for some reason, people see Western, they say the cowboy hat. I'm going to light that cigarette. I'm going to chill out in the wide open spaces and life moves at a different pace. Because when you're not doing all that stuff, what do? Well, I'm just sitting on the ranch and herding sheep, herding cattle. And you're like, wow, this is it, huh? This is all you do? And I think that infects them, that mindset.
Now, you can go back to, I think it's like 1903 with the Great Train Robbery, where people loved Westerns before the period of the West came to an end. Like, there were books about Billy the Kid and Jesse James and those guys that people couldn't get enough of. So almost with the invention of film, people flocked to the theaters to see Westerns. And when you think about like the 50s, Rawhide and Bonanza and Ponderosa and all those shows on television, and The Lone Ranger on radio, people couldn't get enough of it. But then like like just about any genre, people I think got burnt out on it after a while, and then they're like, "Oh, the period of the Western is dead," and then all of a sudden, a film comes out and makes a ton of money, and it wins an Oscar, and it's like, Westerns are back,
but
baby.
Hollywood was to blame for that.
Mm-hmm.
The whole cookie cutter thing. We want that. Just copy the same story.
Yeah, that was a success, so let's make another one. Yeah.
So I was going to compare that to something we talked about a couple episodes ago. Started like in the late 60s, how people got tired of musicals.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's a similar type of thing.
Yeah, but they eventually, a good one comes out.
Good one comes out.
People flock to go see it.
For that nostalgia purpose. And then, like I was talking to Joe before we started the show, in the mid-2000s when there were a couple good, or I should say really good, Westerns that I saw in the theater, I'm like, wow, is this going to make a comeback? Like a big wave like it was, in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
It didn't, but it encouraged other people like Taylor Sheridan, who started Yellowstone, and a couple other directors to look at this and say, there's a market for it but we can't saturate it.
Well, the bottom line is people will go see good movies. People tend to stay away from bad movies, even though people do go see bad movies. But I never believe that a genre is dead. I'm burnt out on Marvel movies, but for me to sit here and say the superhero movie is dead, I'd be an arrogant a-hole to say that. You make a good Marvel movie, people are going to come and see it.
Yeah.
So, like Thunderbolts is an example of that. People were getting burnt out on superhero movies, and then people flocked to the theaters to see Thunderbolts. They got back to their roots. So
yeah, they got to switch it up a little bit and make it a little different than what people had gotten burnt out on. That's how they keep going forward. Yep. And we'll see what happens with Superman and Fantastic Four.
Oh God, I'm so concerned.
I got a bad feeling about Superman. We'll see.
I don't know if Marvel ever recovered from their mistake with Endgame. I think it's just I've never seen it. Remind me, like I think I've said this before. It reminded me of the old Detroit Lions. Like you have it on the goal line, just get the touchdown. You don't have to overthink yourselves with this time travel. Yeah, and then they should have just done it. Like, no, we're not going to use them. Like, seriously, the tush push will get you in. In Endgame, they just when the moment they tried to fix that whole snap thing by saying no, you snap it. No, you snap it. I'm like, guys, is this a musical? What are we doing? You just fix it. And they open compelling storylines, but they completely screwed it. At least with Westerns, I think some of the more modern stuff that they're doing now, like the remake of 3:10 to Yuma, True Grit.
Yeah,
I actually enjoyed those remakes. I remember seeing the original ones,
and they did well. Some of them did really well at the box office. Before we get into the modern Westerns, I want to throw some classics out, and I know. Andrew, you got a pen there. Get ready to write some of these titles down if you haven't seen them.
Well, you know I haven't.
Yeah. Now, some of my favorite classic Westerns, like pre, 1970, maybe even pre-1960s.
You're talking about the golden age, like late mid-40s.
Yeah, we're going way back. We're talking, there's going to be some names you're going to hear me mention repeatedly. John Wayne. John Ford, Jimmy Stewart, Henry Fonda. We're talking about that era of Westerns. And my favorite westerns from that era are the ones I can watch over and over and over. And that pretty much goes with any genre. For a movie to be on my 100 favorite movie list is a movie I can watch over and over and over again, like you're listening to a favorite song. And one of those classic westerns that I lost track of how many times I've seen it is a movie called Rio Bravo. Came out in 1959, directed by Howard Hawks, starring John Wayne at his peak, Dean Martin, a beautiful Angie Dickinson, the singer Ricky Nelson, Walter Brennan, one of the great, scruffy old gold diggers, and Ward Bond, who I believe was the villain in that film. Enormously popular on Rotten Tomatoes, 96% from critics, 91% from the audience. And again, it's a simple, straightforward movie where John Wayne, with the assistance of Walter Brennan, running the local jail in this small western town, capture a bad guy who's like wanted for murder. They put him up in the jail cell, but he has lots of powerful and wealthy friends who do everything they can to try to get him out of that jail. So the movie is basically a small band of heroes trying to defend their fort against the bad men trying to break out their brethren.
I heard a rumor that was a inspiration for Assault on Precinct 13.
Very similar premise, yeah. And so, like I said, it's a very simple, straightforward movie. There's a romance aspect between John Wayne and Angie Dickinson. Ricky Nelson at the time, he became a heartthrob on television. And so, of course, they gave him some songs to sing. And, of course, Dean Martin had to get in and, get in on the songs. And it's just enormously entertaining.
Wouldn't that be one of the easiest Western movie bingos? Dean Martin's in this bit. He's going to sing. It's like that new Smurfs movie has Rihanna. You know she's going to have a song in there.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not going to have Dean Martin not have a song.
The funny thing about that time period, Dean Martin did a couple of Westerns, I think a couple with John Wayne, but he was also doing his TV show at the time. So because he couldn't shave, he would show up on his TV show wearing a cowboy hat, and he'd have that scruffy beard, and they would do like a sort of a Western theme episode of his TV show because he was in the middle of making this movie. But it's one of my all-time favorites, and I absolutely love it. Are either one of you guys familiar with Rio Bravo?
Yeah, I saw it in the 90s. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but I remember watching it with my dad, and that was one of those things where he's like, you got to sit down and watch this. It's Dean Martin in the Western. I'm like, oh, all right. And and it's John Wayne. It's the Duke. So I enjoyed it, and that's the first time I saw it. I was like, wait a minute, this is Assault on Precinct 13. And I was like, no, wait a minute, this came out first.
Yeah, right.
So, whoops.
Now, if Rio Bravo was a really good hamburger, The Searchers is more like filet mignon. It's more complex. It's more deep. It's more dramatic than Rio Bravo. The Searchers, which came out in 1956, 3 years earlier than Rio Bravo, directed by John Ford, who we mentioned a moment ago, starring John Wayne, Jeffrey Hunter, Ward Bond again, and a very young Natalie Wood. Natalie Wood is part of a pioneer family that, for the most part, get massacred by natives, but she's taken hostage by the natives, who pretty much killed her entire family. And what's shocking about this movie, when I sat down and watched it for the first time, expecting sort of a lightweight John Wayne Western, was basically they were searching for Natalie Wood's character, and if they found that she had been corrupted by the natives, they were going to kill the little girl. And I'm like, wait, what's going on here? What are you talking about? Like, that was their motivation for tracking down this little girl. And spoiler alert, eventually they came to their senses. But that was so shocking to me for a movie that came out in 1956 that they felt she would rather be dead than corrupted by Native Americans.
Kind of tells you something about what was going on. It's like, oh, I guess, huh? Hey, guys.
Yeah. Now, if you were to ask most film critics what's the greatest Western ever made, The Searchers is usually the consensus that most critics agree that The Searchers is the, if not one of the greatest Westerns ever made. And I remember when I watched it for the first time, it stuck with me. Not just the story, but the cinematography, the landscapes. There's a famous image of John Wayne filling up a door frame shot from behind and stuff, and you just see his imposing figure, and it's a great, great film. Now, I used to have a big old poster of The Searchers hanging on my wall until I started reading about some personal comments that John Wayne had made in a Playboy interview. I think we talked about this before.
Yeah.
And myself, in good conscience, couldn't allow myself to have a big old poster of John Wayne hanging on my wall after reading some of those. So as much as I love his movies, the characters he plays, I don't agree with his politics, so I had to take that poster down. But
there's that one part, I forgot which, I'm dying now, on which movie. Yeah, I served for the Confederacy. I'm like, oh, well, it's rolling a little too easy off your tongue there, John.
Yeah. There's some episodes of I Love Lucy that John Wayne appears on when she steals his footprints from Grauman's Chinese Theater. And they kept mentioning a movie that he was filming at the time, and I'm trying to recall what that was. But when I finally sat down to see the movie, they kept plugging on I Love Lucy. I was kind of horrified because John Wayne must have used the word commie 100 times in that movie. And this was during the time of, the Red Scare and Blacklist and all that stuff. And here's John Wayne going, well, get those commies. And I'm like, okay, take it down a notch, Duke. And so his politics kind of seeped in to his movies a little bit. So it's disheartening.
Didn't he had a take on High Noon, right? John Wayne actually was, when he saw High Noon, was like, wait a minute, this feels very anti-American.
Yeah.
And he went on to go trash the movie. I'm like, dude.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, you're absolutely right that somehow there was a left and right divide when watching High Noon, which we'll get to in a moment. But it's basically the sheriff going to the townsfolk to help them deal with some bad guys, and they're all a bunch of cowards, and they're like, you're on your own. But somehow they read something into this saying it was liberal garbage. And I'm like, I don't see it, but I don't know.
I was like, wow. All right, John. Way to support the industry.
Now, speaking of John Wayne, the movie that made him a star came out in 1939. He had done some B-movie westerns prior to Stagecoach, directed by John Ford. John Wayne starred as the Ringo Kid, and I almost hate to say this to you, Imaginos Pete, but the critics give it 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, I've seen a few of these for these westerns, and I've just learned to shake my head. It's fine, let them have it. Everyone lives in their own little Narnia.
86% from the audience. It is definitely, in my opinion, top 5, maybe top 3 greatest westerns of all time. Again,
it's on Mount Rushmore. Yeah. I just, here's one thing. I forgive audiences for giving 100% because they're just audiences.
Keep in mind, it's not audiences, it's critics.
When critics give 100%, they've lost all credibility. They should just, throw themselves on a flight of stairs.
Now, the premise of this film, if you have not seen it, Andrew, have you seen Stagecoach?
So, the other night, I told my dad I was doing this podcast episode, and he loves westerns. Of course, he's 70 now, so he grew up in the watching
he probably had cap guns and a little cowboy hat. Yeah,
watching the Rifleman, and he still watches that stuff to this day. So I said, I got to ask you about this. What is, if you could pick one of the older westerns for me to watch, what would you suggest? And he suggested Stagecoach.
Yeah,
and he goes, that's a movie that made just what you just said. That's the movie that made John Wayne a star.
Yeah.
So I watched it and I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah, and again,
Excellent
simple
movie.
story. So you have a group of people who would never socialize together, all trying to travel in this stagecoach. And John Wayne, who has sort of a dark past, his character, the Ringo Kid, is hired to kind of escort this group through enemy territory. And it's a simple story about class divides. And he's basically the anti-hero, I suppose. But yeah, that performance made John Wayne.
And I like it because I've talked about this on our show before. It's kind of like sort of like a road trip movie. You have like you said, you have different types of people together in a stagecoach, and they're interacting together. The drunk, was he a doctor? I think.
I don't remember. Yeah.
But he was so funny, and the way his voice was, it was really funny.
Yeah,
I really liked it.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you used the term Mount Rushmore because it would definitely be on my Mount Rushmore of Westerns.
To our audience out there, I just lost $5.
How's that? Because he saw a movie?
Yep. I mean, Stagecoach. I thought I was safe on my bet.
Yeah. No, see, that's why they call it gambling.
On its Wikipedia page, just like you said, Joe, it's been recognized as an important work transcending the Western genre, widely considered one of the greatest and most influential films ever made.
Yeah, definitely.
High praise.
And, there's some amazing stunts in that movie that inspired scenes like in Indiana Jones, where, Indiana Jones is passing under the truck, that sort of stuff. The stuntman on Stagecoach, which I believe was, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, Yakima Canute, I think was the stuntman. One of the most famous stuntmen of the classic Hollywood era. And he would do those crazy stunts on horses and things like that. So, yeah. So, great movie. If you haven't seen it, add it to your list. Another John Ford movie starring John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart and Lee Marvin as the villain. The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, 1962. Again, highly rated on Rotten Tomatoes, 95 from critics, 92 from the audience. And I remember vividly seeing this movie for the first time and just being blown away by it that Jimmy Stewart basically plays a character who doesn't really want to get involved. He wants to be the peaceful type. And John Wayne is like,
Wasn't he a senator?
Just doesn't fly. I don't think was he a senator? He might have been a politician of some sort. I'm not sure.
Because I kept thinking, what's with Jimmy in these politician roles?
Yeah, right. But then Liberty Valance, the villain in the movie, played by Lee Marvin, I guess he challenges Jimmy Stewart to a duel, or they end up drawing guns on each other. And then you find out that he may not necessarily be the guy who shot Liberty Valance. And it's a shocking twist at the end of the movie. And love me some Jimmy Stewart, and having two greats, John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart on screen sharing the scenes together. Great movie if you haven't seen it.
Did he play the same character as in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington?
No, this was far less annoying. This character was far less annoying.
That was a film we were forced to watch in one of my poli-sci classes.
Yeah, they kind of shovel that down there and say, "Yeah, watch this. This is ideal." I'm like, "Yeah." So is this?
On the other end of the spectrum, we got to watch Dr. Strangelove.
Oh yeah, for
a poli-sci class, and that
was fun.
The whole class loved it.
Yeah, that was great. I was surprised how much I liked that movie. This I don't want to call this a modern Western, but it's this might be the next. So if the John Wayne era is like the classic era or the golden age of Westerns, this may have ushered in the silver age of Westerns.
Anything after 1980, Joe. That's an easy way to do it.
Pre-1980. So
right,
maybe after 1980 would be the Bronze Age. But now we're talking about this guy who starred on a TV show called Rawhide, playing the hero, no blur, no shades of gray. He just played the hero. He got tired of playing the hero, wanted to play the anti-hero in films. And no one would hire him. They thought that people couldn't understand him. No one wanted to put him in the movies. So what did he do? He went to Spain, I think it was, with Sergio Leone. And the first movie they did together was A Fistful of Dollars in 1964. They followed that up with For a Few Dollars More in 1965. And then one of the all-time classics. All of these could be classics, but The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in 1966.
What a trilogy.
Some people call it the Dollars Trilogy. Some people call it the Man with No Name Trilogy because he's never identified by name in the movie. But that trilogy, which they refer to as the Spaghetti Western because they have Italian influence, shot in Europe. And that made Clint Eastwood a major, major star, starting off in the Westerns and then transitioning to the Dirty Harry movies, where he did 5 or 6 of those, and cemented his place as one of the all-time great movie stars.
I love the casual prejudice that they throw in there. It's a spaghetti Western. Why? It was mostly filmed in Italy, so it's spaghetti. It's like, so some of these haven't been shot in like Bombay. Yeah, a bit of curry Western, It's like, oh, we're just going to go with that, huh? And no one sees it? All right, go ahead.
You're going to have to coin a phrase. Like, if there's a Western shot in India that becomes a hit, you're going to have to come up with some cool nickname for that.
It's going to be curry Western. The bar is so low.
But, yeah, imagine someone dismissing those movies as the spaghetti Western. That's disrespectful.
Because Leone said that it's the same character in all 3 movies.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
So, that's one of the ones where I thought A Few Dollars More was better than A Fistful of Dollars.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I actually liked A Few Dollars More because it built on the original, and it's one of those few ones where you don't have a major drop off. Like, it's not like Godfather 3.
Yeah. No, this is a solid trilogy, and I love The Good, Bad, and the Ugly with Lee Van Cleef and
the score.
The music. Yeah.
Music that went with it.
What was his name? Ennio
Morricone.
Music is incredible, and just Clint Eastwood. Like, I just saw a clip coincidentally a day or so ago where he's riding his horse and some bad guys are shooting at the horse and making the horse run. I think it was a mule, and eventually Clint Eastwood's character gets off the horse, goes in for a drink, comes out, approaches the bad guys, and goes, I think you need to apologize to my mule. And they're like, ha, 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 ha. And they end up paying the price. But he is such a badass in these movies where if I saw him come up to me and go, you need to apologize to the mule, I'm like, where's your mule? Can I go speak to him? Because he is intimidating. He's amazing in those movies, and he just built a career off that squint, like the sun is constantly in his eyes. Even when he was Dirty Harry, he always had that squint.
Clint, we're indoors. We're in a basement. The lights are dim.
You think they called him Squint Eastwood?
Oh, my. You know what's going to happen? This is the episode he hears. He listens to.
I just looked up some factoids about Fistful of Dollars, which I have not seen, but I've always heard good things.
Okay, now we're back on track.
No. So it had Fistful of Dollars had a budget of only $200,000.
Wow.
It made $19.9 million.
Oh my God.
So I did the math on that. It made 99.5 times as much money back from its budget.
Wow.
Think about that.
That's awesome. Wow.
That's another thing for
amazing.
For Westerns, they were relatively cheap. To make.
Yeah.
All right, so our next movie also, I think, falls within this silver age of classic Westerns. We're talking Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, 1969, directed by George Roy Hill, and one of the most charismatic casts of all time, Paul Newman, Robert Redford, Catherine Ross.
Was that their first movie together?
It might be the first movie they paired up on,
That's
but
amazing.
they just bounced off each other so well. And
I know who Brad Pitt's been copying. When I saw Redford's character, I said, I've seen Brad. It wouldn't shock me if Brad Pitt copied his performances.
Yeah. It earned $102 million domestically on a $6 million budget, so that's a nice ROI. 89% positive from film critics, 92% from audience members on Rotten Tomatoes. I've only seen it maybe once or twice, but it is great, and the actors are just so darn good in this movie. And one thing that's always kind of odd with Westerns, and I may mention this on a couple of upcoming films, is when they use modern music on a Western, it always feels kind of weird. But one song that came out of Butch Cassidy was "Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head," when they're riding on a bike and they're both sort of being flirty with Catherine Ross's character, and it feels out of place because to me it's like a '70s song that I grew up with, but it seemed to work in the film and became a monster hit.
When you watch that now, it almost looks like Paul Newman's planking while riding that bike. He's almost vertical, like horizontal. And how is he doing? Oh, okay. Still, kudos to you, Paul.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go on a limb here. They lived.
Oh, yeah, because it ends on a freeze frame.
They lived.
And they're, in real life, there's speculation that they somehow survived. But
I will choose speculation. They lived.
I think it was a great artistic call to do the freeze frame and let the audience decide what their fate
I mean, they didn't help by letting the audio run.
Right.
Because I kept like, oh,
gunfire.
Is that a machine gun? Did they bring out the Gatling on them? Oh, dear.
But this definitely could be part of an argument to put this movie on Mount Rushmore because it's one of the most famous Westerns ever made. I mean, if you mentioned Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, people picture Newman and Redford in those roles, and it established them as major movie stars.
At least I could say this before the year 2020. It was part of the lexicon. Oh, okay, whatever you say, Butch and Sundance. Yeah, why don't you talk to Butch and Sundance over there? They're those with, caused all the problem. Like when you just say it and
or two people are just they always get in trouble together. Butch and Sundance over there. Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
Of course, now you say this, people are like, what are you talking about? Like Sundance, the film festival?
Yeah, right.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh, my headache.
We touched on High Noon earlier, but I just wanted to throw that out. 1952. This goes back into the golden age, I think, starring Gary Cooper, another movie that generated a major star in Gary Cooper, and of course the absolutely lovely Grace Kelly, one of the most beautiful women to ever appear on screen.
Yes.
Lloyd Bridges is in it. Henry Morgan, who gained popularity on MASH, was in several Westerns from that time period. 95% from critics on Rotten Tomatoes, 89% from the audience. Again, here's the hero of the film just trying to get some support, trying to get someone to cover his back, and no one is willing to make a sacrifice to save their own town. They're willing to let these villains come in here and run the town, and it's so shocking. And he's like, "Fine, I'll do it myself." And one of the few people who literally saves his skin is Grace Kelly's character. She picks up a gun and saves him when he needs it. But just a great movie, just a gut punch of a movie where a guy just has to take matters into his own hands because he's not, the people he's trying to save aren't willing to be saved. It's a great message, great movie, and an all-time classic. Again, this next movie I think might be considered the silver era. John Wayne just continued, burning his star through 1969 when he appeared in True Grit. He was starting to get a little older. He wore that patch over his eye as Rooster Cogburn. Co-stars in True Grit were Glenn Campbell, who almost single-handedly ruined the movie. He's a singer, not an actor, and when he delivers his lines, he's not speaking dialogue. He's just stating lines, almost like he's reading them from a cue card, and it's very hard to watch.
I don't know if anyone else picked up it, but you could almost see the contempt in John Wayne's face.
Yeah.
Looking at him, he's like, I can't believe I'm sharing screen time with these putz.
He was awful in it, and I don't think he did many other movies.
John Wayne's anger and it looks so real. What do you think inspired him? I was like, I don't know, right there, the guy next to him.
Yeah. Now, Kim Darby, she was probably in her mid to late teens when she was in this movie, but she had the persona and the wisdom and charisma of someone much older. For her to handle the dialogue that she did, she was a breakout star in that movie. And some supporting roles by Robert Duvall and Dennis Hopper as some of the villains in that film. Great cast. One of the all-time great movie lines, one of my personal favorite lines, is when John Wayne, Rooster Cogburn, is by himself. he's staring down the villains across this open field, and I can't remember if he's telling them to surrender or whatever. And they sort of laugh him off, and he delivers that line, "Fill your hands, you son of a bitch!" And he's riding with rifles in each hand. He puts the reins in his mouth, and they charge at each other, just firing. And John Wayne developed that skill where he would fire a shotgun and spin it, and he would cock it as he spun it and get another shot off. And
like Terminator 2.
Where do you think they got it?
He got that.
Yeah.
I'm sure T2. They
James Cameron.
They watch some old movies. Yeah. But such a great moment. I'm getting goosebumps just even thinking about that. And John Wayne's characters were just incredible on screen right up to almost the very end there. Now, of course, True Grit was remade in 2010 by the Coen brothers. John Wayne's character, Rooster Cogburn, was played by Jeff Bridges, who was really good. Matt Damon stepped into the Glenn Campbell role. Josh Brolin was and Barry Pepper, I believe those were villains. And
Haley Steinfeld.
This is where I discovered Haley Steinfeld.
Yeah, she was great in that.
Was remarkable. Yep. And like Kim Darby before her, she was given very, very complicated dialogue, and I could imagine the time and effort she went into memorizing this old-timey way of speaking and somehow just nailing it. And I believe she was nominated for an Oscar for that role. I'll double check.
I'll check.
See if she was nominated for an Oscar.
I remember that I had to turn on the captions initially until I got Bridges' dialect on. I was like, oh, okay, that's what he said. I said, wait, what? Why are you talking like that? John didn't.
Now, if I was to ask you, was this True Grit remake a hit, what would your response be?
No, it should have been.
Well, would you consider this a hit? $252 million on a $38 million budget?
Really?
It was a hit, my friend.
10 of those dollars were mine.
Mine too. I saw it in the theater.
Yeah, I saw it.
I really enjoyed
it. My girlfriend at the time, she liked the original. She was into Westerns. I wasn't.
Yeah.
And I'm like, she's like, I want to see this because I like the original. And then I saw who was directing it. I'm like, oh, yeah, let's go. Yeah.
I have to, I'll do it for you, sweetie.
Yeah. But no, I remember loving it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And again, a star was born with Haley Steinfeld, who's great in everything she did. I
just
love Bumblebees. Bumblebee, remember Bumblebee?
Yep.
Yeah.
She's fantastic. So I remember, this is a long story, so I'll try to make it short, but I remember sitting in on an acting class in L.A. I was shooting video, and I looked up on the wall to see some of their success stories, and Haley Steinfeld was on the wall as a success story from this tiny little acting class in L.A. somewhere. So it was really cool to go, oh, look at Haley. Cool. But yes, Haley, if you're listening, you were absolutely remarkable in this movie. The Oxbow incident, 1943. We're going a little farther back. Henry Fonda starring vehicle, another movie with Harry Morgan in it. 92% from critics on Rotten Tomato, 91% from audience. I got to ask you, are you familiar with this movie, The Oxbow Incident?
I am not.
Never heard of it.
This is another movie that I watched only because it was recommended by the AFI, American Film Institute. So I sat down and watched it, and it impacted me. It affected me deeply. And again, for a movie that came out in 1943, I'm shocked that they were making these types of movies during that time period. But the basic premise of the movie is word gets out that there were some cattle rustlers. And in the Old West, rustling cattle was a hangable offense. And so a group of vigilantes, I guess you would want to call them, stumble across some guys around a campfire. They assume that they match the description of the rustlers, and they engage in a debate over whether these guys should be hung or not. And they're like, we don't know what you're talking about. The mob decides to hang them, only to find out that they are not the cattle rustlers and have to live with those consequences. It is a gut punch of a movie. It's pretty powerful stuff.
I'm surprised they did that given the time. Because once the war started, I figured most movies were greenlit that were, support the war.
Yeah.
Let's, who's watching westerns right now when we're worrying about, the Japanese out west
Yeah.
and the Nazis out east?
Yeah. And it makes you wonder, if this is some sort of comment on the blacklist and all that stuff. Hanging innocent men basically is a metaphor for what was going on in Hollywood at the time. So
Yeah, the Red Scare.
So I'm sure there are people going, "Oh, this is communist propaganda," blah 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 blah. But it is a powerful, powerful movie about mob mentality.
I was just looking up. The True Grit remake was nominated for 10 Oscars.
That I did not know. That's incredible.
It didn't win one.
Wow. Now, did Haley get nominated?
Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor for Bridges, Best Supporting for her,
Nice.
Adapted Screenplay, Art Direction, Cinematography, Costume Design, Sound Editing, and Sound Mixing.
If you haven't seen it, check it out.
And a 95% on Rotten Tomatoes.
There you go.
I'd be okay with the nomination. It's like making the Final Four. You don't have to. You don't have to win it. Just make the Final Four.
No, that's impressive. Now, the next movie I wanted to talk about, it is I don't want to say a ripoff. Let's say it was inspired by Seven Samurai. This movie is called The Magnificent Seven, came out in 1960, directed by John Sturges, starring an incredible cast: Yul Brynner, Eli Wallach, Steve McQueen, Charles Bronson, Robert Vaughn. 89% from critics, 87% from audience on Rotten Tomatoes. When you think about the movies that were inspired by the concept of outlaws and castaways coming together to defend a helpless village against raiders who are stealing their resources, and somehow these misfits become heroes to these people and defend the village. How many times have you seen that theme in various movies and TV shows? And I distinctly remember an episode of The Mandalorian where these misfits had to come together to defend a village. Against,
Directed by?
John Favreau? Or who directed
No, Bryce Dallas Howard. She
directed that episode.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so Magnificent Seven, and I guess I should give credit to Seven Samurai because they came up with that concept. But that concept has been done again and again and again in movies throughout the decades of misfits banding together to fight evil. As recently as the Thunderbolts, you can describe the Thunderbolts that way, a group of misfits who come together by chance, end up uniting and fight the common enemy. We've seen it time and time and time again, and it always stands the test of time. I mean, it's gotten to the point where I go, "Oh, this is Seven Samurai," but that doesn't mean I don't enjoy it.
Yeah, it's a great plot outline, if you want to call it that. That you can adapt it to any genre, any situation, as long as you have.
It's like a bunch of adventurers gathering in a tavern to go on a quest.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The Wizard of Oz.
Wizard of Oz misfits
formula.
come together. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And it was remade. I don't know if you guys saw the remake. It's 2016, starred Denzel Washington, Chris Pratt, Ethan Hawke, Vincent D'Onofrio, and I saw it in the theater and I enjoyed it. A lot of people probably aren't aware that it was ever made, but they did a nice job of remaking The Magnificent Seven in 2016. Now, here's a Western we need to talk about. This is probably top 10, top 5 for me. A little movie called Blazing Saddles.
Yes.
1974. Directed and, I don't want to say starring, but Mel Brooks makes an appearance in the film. Starring Cleavon Little in a groundbreaking role. Gene Wilder, Harvey Korman, Madeline Kahn, and one of my all-time favorites, Slim Pickens. We got to go back and get a shitload of dimes. Love him. Monster hit $119 million in 1974 on a $2.6 million budget. I remember seeing the movie in the theater, and as I was 8 years old when it came out.
My God, Joe.
Falling out of my seat, laughing, especially the campfire scene.
Oh, yeah.
when can we get another plate of beans, Mr. Taggart? I'd say you just about had enough. One of the funniest moments. Oh, Mongo. Oh, my gosh. Mongo, just a pawn in the game of life, which I believe that line was written by Richard Pryor, if I remember correctly. And one of the funniest movies ever made, some of the funniest moments ever captured on film.
The sheriff is near. He said the sheriff is near.
Excuse me while I whip this out. So many great lines. And then just the crazy ending where they step off the Western set into a Broadway musical set and bring the fist fight with them. And
everyone talks about Daredevil breaking the fourth wall. No.
What is it? Throw out your hands. Stick out your toes. Give it a push. Just such a great movie. And they end up on Hollywood Boulevard at Grauman's Chinese Theater. And, God, there's the line where Harvey Korman's character's name Hedley Lamar. And people keep calling him Hetty, and he keeps correcting him. And then I think it was Mel Brooks said, "What are you worried about? You can sue her," And it was because I think she was going to sue for using her name. But one of the greatest comedies of all time, and it just happens to be a Western, which makes it one of the greatest Westerns of all time.
That guy didn't give me a harumph. Give the governor a harumph.
Harumph. This paddle is defective. So many great lines and moments.
Can't you see that man is my mistake?
Gong. So yeah, love that movie. Seeing that movie in the theater when it came out, I feel like sticking it to you guys. It was such a great movie theater moment to hear the audience.
Well, I don't
roaring.
have a DeLorean, Joe. Otherwise, I could have.
So good. Now, I do have to admit, if and when I do watch the movie today, I close the blinds, I turn off the lights, I turn down the volume so the neighbors don't hear, and I'll sit there and laugh my butt off. But it's not something you want someone walking by and go, "What are you watching?" No, let me explain. It hasn't aged well as far as political correctness goes, even though it was making a point. It's satire. But it's tough to watch with a group today, but just one of the all-time great movies.
An underrated comedy for Westerns, and there's several out there. I mean, I could like Three Amigos and all that stuff, but Maverick with Mel Gibson, Jodie Foster, and Gardner.
Yeah,
it's I one of my friends showed it to me when we were kids. We were having like a sleepover. He's like, "You guys got to see this." We're like, "What the hell is Maverick?" We watched it. I loved it.
Now, it's based on a TV series that starred James Garner, so it was really cool that they got him to reprise his role. And Mel Gibson is his son, if I remember correctly. And it's really, really well done. And that's a good segue because I think I'm done talking about the classic Westerns. I'm sure I've left stuff out, but let's talk about modern Westerns. My current favorite modern Western is Tombstone. Absolutely love Tombstone. Came out in 1993, starring Kurt Russell, who also, I'm told, directed some of the film because I think the director was indisposed for some reason. An Oscar-worthy performance by Val Kilmer, who I don't believe was even nominated and should not only have been nominated, should have won an Oscar for that performance.
That movie made me mad. I wanted more Val Kilmer, and I got Val Kilmer at the end. When I got Doc at the end of him. I wanted more of that character in his prime.
Yeah, we need to. Yeah, I'd like to see a young Doc movie with that accent and that attitude, and so many great lines.
If they were to make it today, who do you think would fill that role?
That's a good question.
I got no easy answer for that. That's because Val Kilmer did such a good job.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like when you hear him talking, like, where's this coming from? Like, who are you channeling? Where did this? It's brilliant too, and just the way.
And so many great lines. I'm your Huckleberry, and all that stuff is just, when they're having the gunfight at the OK Corral, and the one bad guy, if you can describe him as a bad guy, is on the ground, and it looks like Doc is out of ammunition, and the guy's on the ground. He's like, well, I got you, you son of a bitch. And he's like, you're a daisy if you do. And then they all unleash on this guy. And, so good.
The closest I can think of is Austin Butler.
I can see that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or, I don't know why Adam Driver is popping into my head. That's
too.
a possibility.
Another good option.
But most historians agree that Tombstone is one of the most historically accurate films ever made depicting the events. Something I read recently, and I don't want to get off too much in a tangent, but as I was looking at who was the villains in this story, was it the Earps, was it the Clantons and the McLauries? And there's no consensus. Some people say the Earps were the villains. Some people say the Clantons and the McLauries were the villains. And I read an article that kind of blew my mind. They're like, in that time period, there wasn't a good guy and a bad guy. The rival that they had was the equivalent of Democrats and Republicans today. So basically, if a group of Democrats came upon a group of Republicans and shot them dead, who's the villain in that scenario? Well, it depends on whose side you're on politically, I guess.
Wow.
So it was a really fascinating description of what happened in the OK Corral that day. And then the retaliation, which killed one of the Earp brothers, wounded the other one, which prompted Wyatt to go on his vendetta. And I got to tell you, man, I'm sitting in the theater going, go get him, Wyatt. Like, I read the actual biography of Wyatt Earp, and it's more fascinating than any movie could ever hope to depict. This guy was incredible, and he went on this vendetta to get rid of what they called the cowboys at the time, and Kurt Russell was just so great in that role. And
who else is in that cast?
So we got Val Kilmer, Bill Paxton,
Okay.
Sam Elliott, Michael Biehn, Dana Delaney is the love interest. Not a monster hit. It made $73 million on a $25 million budget, and audiences seem to like it more than critics for some reason. Critics gave it 76%, audience 93%. In my opinion, it's one of the greatest westerns ever made, and one of my all-time favorite movies. And love Kurt Russell's performance, Val Kilmer's performance. Everybody was just so good.
Sam was great. Sam, I feel like Sam was born with that mustache and the voice. He came out, wah, mom, wah.
Hello, Mom.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
I drive a
so
truck.
Good, man. Great movie, great modern western. Came out in 1993, and that's a movie where if it's on, I'll sit down and watch it if I ever catch it.
I could
great.
see that movie getting lined up for a remake because it's coming up on its 30 years.
Yeah.
Possibly. I mean, it's a based on a true story. So true stories get told time and time and time.
And
again.
I'm just saying, because we won more Doc Hollywood, someone could just do a limited series on it. Give yourself more room.
Did you say Doc Hollywood?
Oops.
It's
Doc Holliday.
You're thinking Michael J. Fox.
Yeah. Because I got Back to the Future 3 on my mind now.
Yeah.
Actually, we could talk about that. I don't know if this would make many lists of the greatest westerns of all time.
No, God,
but the third installment of Back to the Future is set in the Old West. Robert Zemeckis returned to direct it. Bob Gale, who was instrumental in creating the first one, was back to write the screenplay. Michael J. Fox came back. Christopher Lloyd's love interest, Mary Steenburgen. Tom Wilson, who is underrated as Biff. He was so versatile in all three of those movies. And, of course, Leah Thompson came back, earned $245 million on a $40 million budget, 79%, 78% on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, I enjoy the film. My biggest gripe about it is, did you have to set the entire film in the Old West? I mean, I know in the first Back to the Future, it was all set in the 50s, but there was that dynamic of meeting his parents and all that stuff. I would have liked to have seen them go back to the Old West, but only spend a little bit of time in the Old West and then maybe visit some other time periods or something. But it felt just more like a Western than a time travel adventure film.
I feel like that was Zemeckis and Spielberg's love letter to spaghetti westerns.
Yeah.
Because he had all the references, like
Clint Eastwood, and he wore the poncho
Yeah.
and all that stuff. Yeah. So yeah, I enjoy the movie. I think it's the weakest entry of all three Back to the Future movies, but it's basically a standard western.
That was one of those things where, story wise, it was just they wanted to go to the West, you wanted to film it, fine. Because it's like, we're out of gas, Marty. Well, I hate to tell you this, Doc. You buried the car and it still has a tank full of gas.
Right.
Just go drain it and put it in this one and then leave.
I think by the time Back to the Future 3 rolled around, I remember reading something online that at some particular point in the movie, there was, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 DeLoreans or something that, like, scattered around or whatever.
I mean, the plot hole by Back to the Future 3, but like, all right, just the plot holes are so big. Just go. just.
That's the problem with time travel movies. Now, we were talking about Tombstone and how historical events will spawn multiple movies. I mean, as far as Tombstone, there was a gunfight at the OK Corral. There was Wyatt Earp. There are all kinds of movies based on those events. Another famous historical character from the Old West is Billy the Kid. And I recently wanted to revisit the movie Young Guns from 1988, where Emilio Estevez plays Billy the Kid, and he's joined by Kiefer Sutherland, Lou Diamond Phillips, Charlie Sheen, and people call it the Brat Pack of Westerns. And I haven't seen it in probably close to 40 years when it came out.
Wow.
And so I sat down to watch it, and I got to say I enjoyed the first one, even though it felt incomplete where they ended it. So then I decided to watch the sequel, Young Guns 2. Now, some of the characters in the first film were killed, so they introduced some new characters with Christian Slater and Alan Ruck, who was Cameron in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. They were added to the cast. And I feel that if you took Young Guns and Young Guns 2 and cut them together into about a 2-hour movie, I think it'd be one of the greatest Westerns ever made. Because the first one ended so abruptly that they didn't get in to the Pat Garrett, Billy the Kid historical rivalry where, spoiler alert, Pat Garrett ends up supposedly killing Billy the Kid. Even though in Young Guns 2, they dispute that Billy the Kid ever died. And there's some theories out there. But watching the two movies on consecutive days, I'm like, these movies are underrated. They're funny. They're charming. They're action-packed. Billy the Kid, you can argue whether he was a heroic figure or a villain. It depends on whose side you were on.
I once got chided for not giving a spoiler warning for Bonnie and Clyde. I was like, are you kidding me?
Spoiler alert.
Why'd you tell me? I'm like,
so if you have not seen the Young Guns movies in a while, you might want to revisit those. What I liked about Young Guns 2 is it almost entirely focused on the rivalry between Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, which I really enjoyed. Now, they did take some liberties with historical accuracy. They killed off some characters who, in real life, lived to a ripe old age. But there are some moments in the films that were taken directly from historical accounts, and I think those are some of the more interesting moments in the film, like where Billy the Kid gets captured in Young Guns 2 and manages to escape, and he kills 2 deputies in the process. The second deputy, he calls out his name and like taunts him and then blows him away. And they did that almost verbatim in the film, even though people debate what he actually said. But anytime I recognize something in the film that was historically accurate, I'm like, boy, that's better than any work of fiction you can come up with. So I don't know, I guess to streamline the story, they took some liberties, but it was really cool seeing some historically accurate things appear in the film.
Joe, did you see an uncredited Tom Cruise?
I did not. I read about it. I may have to go back and revisit that, but apparently he was on set and he played like a soldier or something, fires a Gatling gun.
But I'm putting that and the sequel on my list.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I was a kid, I would see it like in the video store and, posters or whatever. But when I was a kid, I wasn't really interested in Westerns, and it just kind of fell from my radar. But then the other day, or yesterday, when you told me that you watched it, I was like, oh yeah, I remember people liking it from what I remember. And it's got a good cast.
Yeah. The only gripe I have about the second one is they run with the legend that Billy the Kid survived, and they have Emilio Estevez in old man makeup narrating the film in an old man voice. And that bugs me a little bit because you got a young guy in his 20s kind of talking like an old man, and it just doesn't hold up. I wish they would have brought an actual old man to come in and dub that in and record in an old man's voice, because it sounds like Emilio Estevez talking in an old man voice. But that's my only gripe. Otherwise, I thought the movies were really, really fun and entertaining. Speaking of fun and entertaining, this might not necessarily be a Western in the traditional sense, but do you guys recall City Slickers?
Yeah, Billy
Yes.
Crystal.
Billy Crystal and friends going to a dude ranch. Jack Palance is the ranch.
Never saw the second one.
There's no reason to see the second one.
I haven't seen any of them, but I remember I was probably 6 or 7 when I remember seeing the previews. It came out, what, 90 or 91?
91.
Yeah. Okay.
Billy Crystal, Daniel Stern, Bernal Kirby, who was just fantastic. And then Jack Palance, who won an Oscar for his role in City Slickers.
Wow.
That was because the Academy had screwed him over so many times, probably.
Yeah, this was sort of an end of your career.
Like, we don't do it now. They're like, so we're nominating him for City Slickers.
Not that he wasn't good. He was great in City Slickers, but I think it raised a few eyebrows when his name was announced.
So you want me to write down City Slickers on an Oscar nomination, the word City Slickers on this ballot. You want me to write this down?
Yeah.
It's a comedy. Do we do this? Did you clear this?
And then the following year, because they have the supporting actor winner announce the supporting actress winner the following year, Jack Palance read, and now I'm drawing a blank on her name, who won the Oscar for My Cousin Vinny. What's her name?
Oh,
Marissa Tomei.
Marissa Tomei. And people thought that
hot.
he made a mistake, that he was senile or whatever. And the Academy has defended themselves and said, no, he read the correct name. So Jack Palance announced Marissa Tomei as the Oscar winner the following year.
2 comedies.
Yeah.
That won an Oscar.
Unheard of.
Back to back.
Unheard of for the Academy to recognize.
And they thought it was starting a trend, and then they were like, we're immediately putting the kibosh on this. So much so that Will Ferrell had to sing a song about it later. A comedian at the Oscars is the loneliest.
Oh, right. Yeah,
They
definitely.
had Jack Palance come out there. I mean, Jack Black come out there. You got me thinking Jack Palance now.
Yeah. But no, City Slickers was a pretty sizable hit. It was a pleasant surprise. $179 million on a $26 million budget.
Yeah.
And it's weird. It says here that the audience gave it 65%, which just doesn't sound right to me, because it was very, very popular when it came out, and it proved that Billy Crystal can be a leading man. He did When Harry Met Sally. He did this, and he was a leading man for a little while in his career. That was a really pleasant surprise. That was a lot
The
of fun.
best Oscar host ever.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, I definitely agree. Now, probably this is one of my personal favorites. This is, gosh, if there's a movie that you would consider has a cult following, maybe this movie qualifies. I bet you if I asked 100 people on the street if you heard of this film, I bet you 99 would say, I don't know what you're talking about. But in 1985, there was a movie called Silverado, and I went to the theater to see it, and it became one of my favorite movies of all time. An incredible cast. Listen to this cast. Kevin Kline,
Yep.
Scott Glenn, John Cleese, Kevin Costner in one of his earliest roles.
Yep.
He was fantastic in it. Brian Dennehy, who I loved. Danny Glover, Jeff Goldblum. It goes on and on and on.
John Cleese?
Yeah, he was like a British, English sheriff.
You seen it? Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I've seen it twice. I saw it once in India, oddly enough.
Was it called a curry spaghetti?
No. Because it wasn't made.
Curry West. If you had not seen it, it is a underrated film. Absolutely love it. I think it's a little underrated on Rotten Tomatoes, 78% and 79%. I would give it close to a 90, if not in the 90s. I love the movie. It's time for me to revisit it, but it's one of the greatest casts of all time, and Danny Glover is fantastic. He basically avenges his father's death when some land barons forcefully take his father's land, And a conversation that we had in the office earlier today is some people might watch a Western and see an African American in it and go, why is there an African American in this Western? In reality, the Civil War had pretty much come to an end. Slaves were freed. They were working the cattle. They were driving the cattle. They were homesteading.
Original cowboys.
They were populating the West. And they were sadly underrepresented in these Hollywood Westerns up until, fairly recently, up until like Django Unchained. And it's a travesty that African Americans weren't more represented in the Old West because they were a big part of the Old West.
That's Hollywood for you.
I know. So, whitewashing history.
That was directed by Lawrence Kasdan, who wrote Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, and co-wrote The Force Awakens and Solo.
You had to throw Solo in there, didn't you?
And Raiders of the Lost Ark.
There you go.
He's
why don't you pick some of the
Solo was decent.
Don't get me
He
started.
got crapped on too much.
It was the movie that nobody asked for.
Oh.
I am begging you to add Silverado to your list.
Absolutely.
I really love it. It might be in my top 5 Westerns of all
Andrew,
time.
you might have to watch some of these movies at double speeds because you have a hell of a list to catch up on.
That's right.
I already got 7.
There's already like 29,000 hours of movies on your list right now.
I have 7 just on the sheet of paper. On my notes app, I have like 29 more. So.
You're going to have to do like a Matrix thing where they insert the thing into your brain and go, okay, we're going to play some movies for you. You just take them directly into your brain.
Yeah.
Upload. Here's the last modern movie. Well, not necessarily the last because there's another list I want to talk about, but one of the greatest Westerns within the last 30 years is Unforgiven, 1992, directed and starring Clint Eastwood, Gene Hackman, Morgan Freeman, Richard Harris. Monster hit, $159 million on a $14 million budget. Won the Oscar for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor for Gene Hackman. Stellar ratings on Rotten Tomatoes, 96, 97%. Again, we're talking about not a clear-cut hero in this film. Clint Eastwood's character does some nasty things that may be justifiable. But what a movie that ushered back in a modern era of Westerns. Absolutely incredible movie. And
I'd like to point something out, Joe. I mean, we say modern era. It came out in 92. So some audience members are like, 92 ain't modern.
It feels like yesterday to me. But, like I said, I think, the classic golden age of Westerns would be 40s, 50s, Silver Age 60s, 70s, maybe into the 80s. And then for me, the Bronze Age or modern age would be the 90s into present day. I still feel like the 90s were 10 years ago. I don't know. It's just so. But one of the great modern Westerns of all time. There were a couple Westerns that came out around that time, like Open Range, which kind of came and went quickly in the theater, but I really enjoyed it. There's another Kevin Costner Western. So, every time someone says the Western is dead, it somehow rears its ugly head and someone releases a great Western that people flock to, and it earns money and
but
wins
that Western
awards.
theme you said earlier just makes a good point. Serenity or Firefly, Mal and his crew, Nathan Fillion and the crew, that was a space Western. Because they had that Western, they'd go out to settlements and colonies out there, and he always had the gunslinger pistol, and then they're always, we got to raid this bank, we got to rob this bank, we got to raid this coach.
I can take it one step further, and I'm sure a lot of people agree with me. Star Wars is a Western. It really is. You rescue the girl, you battle the villain. It's a space Western.
Especially how the movie opens on Tatooine, going to the cantina, meeting up with a rogue pilot to try to get you somewhere. Yeah. No, I totally agree.
That's why, just recently I watched on the anniversary of the release of Star Wars, May 25th, I watched the unedited, original version without Episode 1, without A New Hope. And in that film, Han Solo just blows Greedo away. Greedo didn't even get his gun out of the holster, basically. That's my Star Wars. That's the movie that Han Solo is a badass
And he
just
flicks
blows
things.
him
Sorry
off.
for the mess.
Yeah, flips him a coin. Yeah. That's my Star Wars. I will always call it Star Wars. I have a hard time calling it A New Hope, but definitely it has all the elements of a classic Western. Yeah.
Yep.
Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about as I was doing research and assembling my lists here, I decided to make sure I didn't leave anything out. I did a Google search for top grossing Westerns, and the list surprised the hell out of me. And I jotted down the top 5, and I think you guys might be surprised as well. Now, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but I'm going to ask you, what would you say is the top grossing Western of all time?
I don't know.
I'll give you a clue.
Yeah.
It came out at the end of 2012,
Oh, I know.
and
Django.
it is a Quentin Tarantino film.
Yep.
Think about that. The highest grossing Western of all time is Quentin Tarantino's Django Unchained. That really blew my mind.
He went through like a Western phase because they also did the Hateful Eight.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I didn't really care for.
Yeah.
But I thght that one was sort of ugly.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed Django Unchained. And what I loved about Django Unchained, it was sort of a homage to spaghetti westerns and the 70s, where there were those quick zooms, and Tarantino just had a blast emulating old movie filmmaking for this movie, and everyone looked like they were having fun making this movie. And DiCaprio to have a chance to play a villain, and there's that story where he broke a glass in his hand and just kept acting, and they used it in the film.
Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't clear that with Kerry Washington because he smeared his blood on her face. I'm sure she was like, "What the hell is going on?"
Could I get a towel? Of course, starring Jamie Foxx, Christoph Waltz. Now, did Inglourious Bastards come out before Django?
Yeah.
So here, Christoph Waltz is one of the most disgusting, vile villains in the history of films in Inglourious Bastards.
That was 2009.
And then he
It
plays
revived
this
his career
role,
and brought him back to the
and
forefront.
he was he played this likable, fun, friendly guy.
Absolutely. And I remember feeling in the theater when he gets shot towards the end.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh man, like
Yeah.
you were rooting for him. He was helping Django. He realized once he got to the plantation, oh, these guys are awful. I'm not leaving here without killing somebody here.
Yeah.
And then he gets it. But
Yeah.
very, very different character than 3 years earlier. Yeah.
Now, one actor who I'm surprised agreed to play in this movie in this role was Samuel Jackson. One of the most despicable characters in all of Tarantino's films.
Yep.
His character was so unlikable. But now, if you're wondering what did the top grossing Western of all time earn, $426 million on $100 million budget.
Nice.
87% from critics, 92% from the audience on Rotten Tomatoes. Great film. I own it, and I want to revisit it again. Number 2 on the list of top grossing Westerns. This doesn't necessarily come as a surprise because this was a phenomenon when it came out. But in 1990, Dances with Wolves came out.
Oh, yeah.
Kevin Costner directed and starred in it. It's sort of his pet project. It earned $422 million, just shy of Django Unchained, but on a $22 million budget. So it made $400 million.
Wow.
Won 7 Oscars, including Best Picture, 87% on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, there are people who praise the film, and there are people who condemn the film for its portrayal of Native Americans. It shows Native Americans during that time period in a sympathetic light, which I think a lot of Native Americans appreciated. But there were some Native Americans who criticized that the language that they use was inaccurate and wrong, and a lot of Native Americans who saw the film would laugh out loud. They're like, "Oh my God, they're not using the language correctly. They should have brought an expert in who was like, here's how you say this."
Yeah.
The compromise to Kevin Costner's like, you want to show these savages in a sympathetic light? Hollywood does not do that. Make their language funny and inaccurate.
Now, of course, Dances with Wolves was remade as Avatar. I won't get into that. Now, here's the most shocking entry on this list. Earning $260 million was 2013's The Lone Ranger.
Oh.
Starring Armie Hammer as the Lone Ranger and
Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp making some curious decisions with Tonto in this film. And I remember seeing it in theaters. And the thing that I didn't necessarily...
It made money?
Well, it's funny you should say that. It earned $260 million, placing it at number 3.
It had to have a huge budget.
Its budget was $250 million.
Okay, see, you just did a little Hollywood thing right there.
Imagine asking someone to pony up $250 million to make your movie, and you earn $10 million. And I don't even think that includes marketing and all that stuff. They probably lost their ass on that.
They definitely lost.
And critics rated on Rotten Tomatoes 31%.
Yeah.
Audience 51%. Now, my biggest gripe with the film, not necessarily with Johnny Depp, but Armie Hammer's portrayal of the Lone Ranger was shocking. They portrayed him as an entitled, sniveling coward throughout most of the film before he finally embraces his role. And I'm like, that is not my Lone Ranger. Why would you go that route and portray him as a reluctant
They leaned
hero?
heavily into the Don Quixote.
Yeah. I didn't care for that at all, and I
and-
thought that was just a terrible, terrible decision, whoever said, oh, let's go this route.
There's always some suit that sits there.
Think about Clayton Moore in that role with that square jaw and that voice. Lone Ranger's always been a hero, and they did try to do a Lone Ranger movie in 1981 that was another box office disaster, and it's almost like karma with that particular film because whoever it was that produced that Lone Ranger in 1981, they're the ones who cracked down on Clayton Moore and said, you can't make any more public appearances with your mask on. You can't call yourself the Lone Ranger. It's almost like what the Tigers did to Ernie Harwell. And I think it was karma that came back and bit him in the ass, and the movie was a box office disaster because they treated Clayton Moore awful.
Is that a Disney project?
Disney was the Armie Hammer version. They did that more recent version, but yeah. So even though it earned money, it lost money on the initial investment, which is $250 million went into this film. I don't see it. I'm not sure what went wrong there.
What? They're like, oh, we need computer effects for what?
Yeah,
it's a Western.
Just green screen it.
So before that, the director, Gore Verbinski, he did Pirates of the Caribbean. So, and those first couple movies were huge.
Yeah.
And with Johnny Depp, of course. So they're like, from on paper, they probably thought, oh, we're going to make $700 million.
I mean.
But the execution looked horrible. And I remember seeing the previews when it came out. I'm like, I'm definitely not seeing that. It did not look good.
And Johnny Depp got so much leeway during this part of his career where he would make some really wild choices with the characters you're playing. And eventually the filmmakers were like, well, he came through on Pirates, so let's just go with it. And people really questioned what he was doing with the Tano character. And every character that came out was more eccentric than the last. And
you talk about in that Pirates thing, misreading the tea leaves. I think the audience came there for Johnny Depp's character, not Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley.
Yeah.
But the next two movies focused on like their love interest, and his dad, and I was like, I don't care. I want Johnny Depp.
Yeah. Yeah, he was fantastic in that. Number 4 on the list we talked about earlier, 2010's True Grit.
Yeah.
Earned $252 million on a $38 million budget. Again, nice ROI on that. Now, here's another shocking inclusion on this list. At number 5, it's a Johnny Depp Western.
What year?
2011.
Also directed by Gore Verbinski.
And this is an animated film produced by Paramount Pictures, which is crazy. A little movie called
Rango,
which I have never seen.
Joe, it is so good. I saw it in the theater.
Apparently, and I can't believe somehow it wasn't on my radar. It's a Western called Rango about a chameleon.
Kind of.
An animated chameleon, even though they got his hands wrong. I'm a chameleon expert. But but this movie...
It takes place in, like, the modern day, but the way the characters are and the way the story is. You know me, I'm not a big animation guy, but I love that movie.
I'm going to have to check it out.
So, that got Gore Verbinski, Pirates of the Caribbean, Lone Ranger, and Rango.
Yeah.
So...
$245 million on a $135 million budget, so it didn't turn an enormous profit, but I'll take $100 million.
I
but
thought
number
it was great.
Number five. Now I can't imagine this list is adjusted for inflation. I would think if you did the Gone with the Wind thing, there'd be some classics that would have to be in this top 10. But
Dances with Wolves would be higher than Django Unchained because those movies are 22 years apart.
Exactly,
something like that. Yeah,
but. Would you agree that's a fairly shocking list?
Yes.
Very.
It would have taken me a long time to get most of those.
Yeah, right. So that's pretty much all I have. Is there any Westerns, Nick, you want to throw out? What haven't we discussed?
No, I mean, when I think of Westerns, we touched on all the traditional ones. I like the ones that are a little bit out of left field. When it comes to comedy, we did Blazing Saddles, we did
City
Maverick,
Slickers.
we did Three Amigos.
Yeah.
I like the spirit of the Western, where there was a little bit about go out of the wilderness, find your own path, make your own destiny. I mean, I want to say manifest destiny, but no, it's a sense of adventure when it comes to the West and the amount of freedom that you have to tell a story out there.
Yeah. Andrew posed an interesting question before the podcast. If you were living in the Old West in the 1880s or whatever, what do you think your career of choice would be?
Blacksmith.
Blacksmith? All right.
I need heat. I need metal. I need some form. Because I need to somehow work on plumbing.
Yeah.
I'm not taking a crap I've done enough camping. I'm not doing any crapping in the woods.
I think I would be like in the theatrical, I'd be on stage getting shot at, trying to entertain the drunks in the saloon and having hopefully coins thrown at my feet. I think that's where I'd be. I would be in the Birdcage Theater there or something like that.
Oh, I want to take back my blacksmith.
I'll edit it out later.
Saloon manager.
There. Oh, see, I can see.
I was going to say something similar. I would love to own and run a saloon restaurant on the first floor and then a hotel upstairs. I think that would be so cool. You're in a
hotel or hotel.
Maybe Saturday night it's something different.
Fair
enough. But you're in a position there that your goal is to make people happy.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's drinking, whatever you're going to do in a hotel room or at a restaurant. So you would be able to hobnob with the higher ups, with anybody coming through town.
Yeah.
And you would get in good with the sheriff, with the banker, the important people in the town, and you can make everybody love you. And
even though the exception to what you just said is one of my all-time favorite TV series, Deadwood, where Sheriff Bullock was at odds with El Sweargen, and they literally came to blows, and that's one of the more entertaining series. And the Deadwood was based on actual historical events, and I lamented the fact that the series ended because toward the end of how many seasons did they do? 3?
I was just reading about it because I didn't know anything. I had heard of it, but 3 seasons.
But at the end of season 3, if I remember correctly, they introduced Wyatt Earp's visit to Deadwood, and then the season ended, and they never picked up where they left off.
Didn't they make a movie a couple years later?
They did, but I don't think Wyatt Earp played a role in that. But
the series,
boy, that was great.
Is it worth watching, the series?
It's one of the greatest TV series I've ever seen in my life.
Well, I'm right.
Top 10 for me.
It's probably HBO, right?
HBO.
Okay.
And it's ultra violent, but absolutely riveting. And Al Swearingen is one of the great. I mean, to me, he's up there with Tony Soprano as one of the great TV creations.
Is it Ian McShane?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's so good in everything he does.
John Wick.
John Wick.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's great.
All right, I got a great list now.
Yeah. Deadwood is so
And he's
great.
fantastic in American Gods. Ian McShane.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, the Neil Gaiman series.
yeah. I'm in the process of moving, and so I was thinking of thinning out my DVD collection, and I'm not getting rid of any movies, but I'm looking at my TV DVDs, and I'm getting rid of most of it, but I can't part with Deadwood. Deadwood is too cinematic to just get cut loose.
You know, Joe, all that you have to do is go to the Lake Orion Library, donate enough of it, and make it the Joe wing. And so you just go out there and they're housing it for you. You just go and check it out. And someone, who checked out my Deadwood?
If I were to donate, they would sell them at their book sale for $1. So I don't know if I want to do that. So, all right, on that note, unless, Andrew, you got anything to add?
I got quite a few.
Throw a couple,
Throw a
because we got about 3 minutes left.
The Revenant with Leo.
Oh, the
Yes.
bear one?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Hell or High Water with Chris Pine and Ben Foster. Jeff Bridges.
Did not see that one. Heard about it. Never
Excellent.
heard of it.
Excellent. No Country for Old Men. I know you
Yeah.
don't like that. Also, the same year as that, There Will Be Blood.
Yeah,
Paul
Daniel
Thomas
Day.
Anderson. Hostiles 2017 with Christian Bale. I saw that in the theater. It didn't make a splash, but it was really good. Cowboys and Aliens, directed by Jon Favreau.
Come on, man.
And then the last one I'll end on, also Coen Brothers, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. So that's 5 different shorts. Did you see it?
No, but it's on my list.
I enjoyed it.
It's good.
Even though each one was surprisingly dark.
Yeah.
Like,
it's a Coen Brothers.
Yeah. So I enjoyed it, and I loved the Buster Scruggs character. He was awesome, but there were many, many twists that had me sitting there like, what the hell just happened? But
Right.
I enjoyed it. And I can't end the podcast without playing this. The Wilhelm. The old Wilhelm. Which someone recently found the original recordings, and some actor in a sound booth somewhere, you hear him being given instruction from someone away from the mic, and he just did all kinds of different screams, and they used that one. I think the first time it was used, I think a guy got shot in the leg with an arrow, and then it was used for a guy getting eaten by an alligator, and then it showed up in Raiders of the Lost Ark and Star Wars when the stormtrooper falls into the chasm. So the Wilhelm scream, I love it. Every time I hear it in a movie, it makes me smile.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I really enjoyed that. Thanks for indulging me and finally getting around to a topic I've been wanting to do for a long, long time.
Yes.
And thank you at home for listening. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Good night, everybody.
Hollywood Blockbusters.
Come to the movies, watch Charlie Chaplin, and put some sunshine into your day. Forget the hard times, come to the movies, and try to laugh your troubles away.